May 31st, Trips and Traps. Andy Serling, joined by Eric Donovan.
And we have a full slate to bring you this week, 6 races all together, so we'll get started with the first race from May 22nd. It's an allowance optional claimer for 3-year-old fillies going a mile and 16th on the turf.
This is not a horse that's buried. This is a horse that runs an exceptional race, and that's the horse who's a little hidden behind the stand there, the one Maximova, who just got off a little sluggishly and took herself out of the race. But, man, Eric, did she run?
She's got a lot of talent, there's no doubt about it, and, off her debut race at Aqueduct, it just seemed like she was probably about 60 or 70% for that race, because she comes back in here, steps up, and, runs 10 times better than she did in her debut, and as you see her getting back in the action there toward the back of the pack.
Yeah, we'll pick it up here, and she moves inside, and she gets a little bit shuffled after sort of moving herself back in the race, and as you're going to see in the stretch, I mean, she is screaming out to run and runs like a wildebeest in the stretch. I think you're right, Eric. I didn't like her in this race. Second-place finisher came back and ran poorly, a Shug McGahee horse, and there's a lesson to be, you keep learning and racing, and I think that I discounted the possibility of a big improvement in the second start for Christophe Clement, who can do it. There she is in the rail, and she just puts in a powerful run.
She does put in an amazing run, is able to get through at that spot and tip out for room a little bit here, and then get through and make a nice run here through the stretch. And a horse that clearly, I didn't think it was the strongest field. It wasn't a weak field though. It was an average field, but this is a New York bred that they took the mare over to Europe to breed to Danehill Dancer, so obviously they were looking for good things when they took her over there, and the product seems pretty good.
Yeah, I don't think this was a bad field. It was a decent enough non-winners of one. She does interfere with the 5 horse who finished third as she's making her move out. It didn't really affect things, but she did come out to that horse. And Maximova, I guess the lesson is, be careful. She wasn't a great price at $12.80, but just keep in mind how much these horses can improve from one start to the next, especially young horses. And Maximova, as you say, a New York bred, Christophe Clement has her. He won the Sands Point with Discreet Mart. I'm not sure this horse ultimately may not be better than that one.
Yeah, I think she's got some more upside. She's only run twice, and this was a big step up off her first race, so we'll see.
And obviously you don't want to see them get left in the gate, but I think breaking from the rail post in the mile and 16th inner turf races might have mitigated things, and I don't know necessarily she has a problem with that.
All right, we'll get on to our second race now. We'll move on to the dirt here. 6 furlongs, a $14,000 claimer. This is the third race from May 24th.
And a horse who Eric properly picked was the best horse in the race. Jack Frost, of course. The problem was you thought he was the speed. He was the speed in this race. He didn't get out of the gate.
No, he didn't get out of the gate. Breaks a length or two slow, and then the rider's kind of has a decision to make here. Do I send him up? Do I just try to sit back and relax a little bit here? He decides to send up, and in essence, where you're going here. Okay, you picked up a couple lengths, but now you're on hold between the two other speeds here.
Listen, it's a problematic situation when you have the rail, but also when you have the rail and a speed horse. You've got to get that horse out of the gate, and that was the rider's obligation here. It didn't work out that way. It's a relatively low percentage rider. And in here, he makes a decision, whether it's the right one or wrong one, to marry himself to the rail. And when that happens, and obviously doesn't have a lot of options, especially when he rushed up in there, when that happens, you leave yourself with only one alternative, Eric.
Yep, you got to stay true and try to come with the rail. And you make a very good point there. When you decide to rush up on the rail, you're married to the rail. If you decide to just sit back and wait a little bit, maybe you can come outside a little bit here, and you see him trying to squeeze through on the rail there, but David Cohn doesn't move over for anybody, and he's especially not moving over for Abel Escano, and that really hampers Jack Frost, of course, who runs pretty well in here, actually comes on and gets second once he's able to get a little bit of room in the stretch.
Right, you see him pinned down on the inside, and that orange happened. I'm critical signs of David, who sometimes will be aggressive even when he doesn't have much horse. At that point, he had horse, and I respect a rider that doesn't just say to people, you want to come up the rail and there's no room? No, he says no, and he has a right to. He had that position, and this rider tried to go through the hole that wasn't there. And as you saw with Jack Frost, of course, when he got through towards the end of the race, he was really running at the end. This was a horse, had he broken cleanly, whatever the case was, he would have been the speed, and he would have won.
He would have won. Now, what do you do with him next time? That's the problem.
I bet against him. Well, the question is, will he have a different rider next time? Will he get an outside post? Will it be a race that has more speed in it? I don't know. It is the kind of horse that sets up to be a trap. He does have the feeling of a last time was the time horse.
Yep. Does, but I guess you got to play it by ear and see what happens, what kind of field he's up against, and perhaps he can be the speed next time with a different rider.
Right, and perhaps he'll be in a similar... I'd love to take a shot with him against Temecula Creek in a fair situation, because I think he can beat that horse.
All right, back to the turf for the third race of this segment of Trips and Traps. It's race number 5 from the 24th of May. A starter allowance optional claimer for fillies and mares going 7.
Talk about a couple of sort of race dynamic situations. The 7 first Whippoorwill, who ends up running 5th in this race, she was making her first starts in September, so she may have needed the race. So in a way, you could look at this a bit of a prep. But she's a horse that has some talent but what she has is one burst. She's not that good, and she has that one burst. And in this race, she gets caught up making a premature move 4 wide, and that's just never going to lead to success for her.
No, if you're a one-run horse, I think you want to be covered up for most of the way so you can relax a little bit. You don't want to be out in the clear like this because you're essentially going to come to a point in the race where the rider asks you for a little bit of run, and you're going to run off a little bit with it.
Right, and listen, we're not saying it's easy. It's easy for us to sit here and say how riders should ride, but it is a rider's job, as you see her back in the middle of the pack, to try to give the horse the best chance it has. Now, in this case, maybe she was coming off the layoff and she needed a race, and this was a good tightener for her, and that's all good and fine. But to sit outside and make no attempt to get inside, make that premature 3/8, 5/16 move 4 wide on a horse like this that wants to be covered up and make one burst in the stretch, well, that's just a recipe for disaster, and I think it makes her look like she ran worse than she did.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think second start back off the layoff, she'll be bound to improve a little bit here as you see her about 5 wide coming into the stretch there, making that move. Now, one of the horses that was on the pace, the 10 Strategic Missile, does stay on, so it's not like not like she moved into the teeth of a super hot pace in here, but looks like a factor in mid-stretch here, and then just comes up a little bit empty in the final furlong.
Yeah, and by the way, the winner got an exceptional ride from Cornelio Velasquez in this race. I mean, drew the rail, but this was picture perfect. Saved ground, angled out with the right time, and did everything right. But I think that First Whippoorwill is a horse that may be going a little longer if she can get, a more inside post or get a more covered up trip and get a little more pace. I think she's going to improve in her second start. Not a killer, but she's better than this race looks, and I think she'll be a little dirtied up.
Okay, race number 8 from May 26th is next. It's a state bred now winners of one allowance for 3-year-olds and up, going 6th on the inner turf course.
And this is quite an example of a premature move collapsing a race, Eric.
Yeah, way more so than the move we saw with First Whippoorwill. We'll take a look at Count Knickerbocker here, who's toward the back of the pack early on.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this race, and it was basically a race that collapsed. River Tune, who finished second, it'll be interesting to see. His rider did a very good move, Junior Alvarado, because he had to get away from a horse that was leaning on him. It might have ended up hurting him because he moved a little sooner to position he wanted to be, but it was a situation where he sort of had to. Count Knickerbocker had that good position, breaking a little bit slow, and could have just sat back and wait, but yet the rider made a decision, and this was another horse coming off a layoff, as you see with turf sprinters, another 8-month layoff, just makes this big, wide, premature move, so he gets the lead, is fourth now, and collapsed the race and cost this horse any chance she had to win.
Yeah, no, this is a little bit too early a move here for Count Knickerbocker for sure. A race that'll probably set him up well next time out here, but I don't know that once he gets started rolling a little bit, I don't know that there was any holding him back.
No, I mean, this was a mistake, and the winner of this race is almost all the way back in last in that blue colors and the red hat, and that was a situation where Jose Espinosa did a good job of just waiting, and this horse, Count Knickerbocker, this kind of ride helped collapse the race and absolutely cost this horse her best chance. Not saying he absolutely would have won, but he would have been no worse than second, and it might have been a much different race had he made his move a little bit later.
Yeah, that's a fair point. You might not have seen a special selection get up in the final stages had the little move not been made there by Count Knickerbocker.
I'm kind of suggesting it would have been 4-11 and I would have made a score here, but it's not really sour grapes. It's just a situation of a horse making a premature move. Now, once again, maybe a horse a little bit fresh coming off the layoff, a good tightener for the horse, but these kind of moves, these 3/8, 5/16, 3/8, 4 blitzes in these turf races, especially at 7, it just seems like the wrong move. It will never work out unless you're just an hour the best.
I agree. All right, we'll move on to the 9th race from May 26th now, an allowance optional claimer on the dirt for fillies and mares going 1 mile. It featured a pretty fast pace.
Yeah, I mean, this, Eric, maybe one of the great examples that will run this year of a collapse situation where 4 horses went. There were speeds. They had no real choice. They went. They collapsed. The horses that were 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th all made their big runs. Charity Ball is the one that survives the pace the best. And Garden Street, the winner, took advantage of the pace, but did get in a little bit of trouble.
No, did get in a little bit of trouble for sure, but we'll take a look at the pace early on here as they go pretty quick down the backstretch for them across the track, a 22-1 opening quarter mile, followed by a 45 half going a mile for these entry-level allowance horses. This is just a fast pace, and at this point here, I thought the rider on Charity Ball, Junior Alvarado, could have made a little bit of a decision to take him back. Instead, he decides to stay up there with the front runners and ends up basically chasing and vying 4 wide here.
I think it's hard. Junior's not an overly aggressive rider. I think sometimes you're dancing with the girl girl that brought you there. And she's a horse with speed. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I think it's hard. She's out in the clear.
Oh, no.
And, it's just sort of the way the race flows. She makes the first move. Now, she doesn't run exceptionally well, but she does finish 4 lengths ahead of the 6th-place finisher in here. Clearly the best of the speeds. Now, she may have been helped by the fact that she was well behind. In the second, you're going to see the eventual winner, Garnet Street, who I thought Edgar Prado made a big mistake going up the rail. Why would you want to save ground in this position and put yourself in a position where you can get stopped in a race that you have to know is collapsing, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, you got to be looking for the clearest run you could possibly find here coming off the turn. And, to come up the inside there, I think you would have been much better off just swinging 5 wide, getting it over with, and, seeing what she's made of in the stretch instead of, lending yourself to the opportunity to get stuck behind a horse. You just, switch out there into the 4-path.
And almost gets blocked again.
Yeah, and you could have gotten blocked again by some tiring speed horses. They could have just backed right up in her face.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy for us to sit here and say to people I should ride. And there's Charity Ball who's making the lead and doesn't run that badly, and there is Garnet Street getting stopped again,
has to come outside.
Blind switched, shut off, angled the outside. She's so much the best, and the best of 4 horses that got a good setup, but so much the best that she's able to overcome it. And I don't think saving that ground helped her.
No, she didn't help her. She's in great form right now, and Pat Reynolds has done an outstanding job in his comeback. It seems like all his horses are live, and she's certainly got the right kind of pace to run that too here.
Yeah, she got a good setup. Now, I think Charity Ball. Obviously, if she got loose to the lead in a similar situation, she'd be a great bet back. But, you want to draw a correlation. Talk about the Derby and Preakness. You talk about a horse like Oxbow, who made one of the first moves, the early moves, into a very fast pace, and how when he got a fairer situation, not a race handed to him, but a fairer situation, how he won the Preakness. And these are the kind of races that when next time, if these horses got together, and obviously Garnet Street won't be in against them, but if they got together and it was a fairer situation for a horse like Charity Ball, or even any of the other speeds, you have to analyze it, I think they're going to run much better.
Yeah, I think you're right. And we'll see what they all do next time out. I would think you have to upgrade the speeds chances and downgrade the closers chances a little bit.
I mean, that's where you can make money when you have a dynamic situation that greatly favors a group of horses and greatly hinders another group of horses, because when the PPs show up, it's not going to be readily apparent to people.
Yep. All right, one more race to bring you. The highlight of the week, the holiday weekend here at Belmont Park. It's the Met Mile. We'll start off taking a look at the head on here.
So it's hard to know exactly what happened, but ultimately I have decided that Mark Valesky drifts in just a fraction. He ends up causing the 2, Discreet Dancer, who reacts to the herd, to drift in after that into cross traffic, who may have been drifting in already, but he exacerbates the drift in because of the way he's drifting in. It's a herd situation, and since I'm a believer in herding, cross traffic, the biggest victim of this, it just makes his sensational performance that much more sensational.
Yeah, I mean, you wonder if he didn't have this little miscue early on here in the race. If the final margin was a nose between him and Sahara Sky, you wonder if he would have been a little bit different.
He would have won if they had all broken in a straight line. Would have won. Now let's talk about horses that had trouble. Swagger Jack in the pink, outside of him in red, is flat out. Last in the screens, the eventual winner, Sahara Sky, and I maintain that the trouble that Flat Out and Swagger Jack got into, because Junior Alvarado, and I'm not knocking him, I think he was right in his thinking, was trying to keep Swagger Jack in with Flat Out. And don't forget, Swagger Jack had just won the Carter. I think because of that, he tightened things up enough to allow a much bigger seam for the eventual winner, Sahara Sky, and Joel Rosario to get through. So the trouble, not only did it help the winner because it hindered the others, but I think it opened up more room for Sahara Sky.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know Swagger Jack won the Carter last time out, but if you're on Flat Out, you're not supposed to be riding against Swagger Jack in this race.
I hear you. I hear what you're saying, and that's a valid point. But he was moving inside of him. He knew they were going quick up front. He felt he had a horse, and I think he was thinking, I'm trying to move, but I want to try to keep Swagger Jack in. And you see Swagger Jack towards the inside in the pink. Outside of him in red, and we're going to circle him right now, is Flat Out. And I do think that Junior overdid it, because you see him kind of leaning on it. I think he got in behind the horse who's sitting second right now, and that's what got him into a jackpot.
Shouldn't he have been looking to get outside, though, around the 3/8 pole, Junior? I mean, shouldn't that have been the move of Flat Out?
Yeah, now here is, you see Sahara Sky's moving into the picture, and he'll have more room because Junior is sort of leaning on the other horse. And if you're right, and he had moved towards the outside, there wouldn't have been as much room. And obviously, if Sahara Sky had been stopped for even the briefest of moments, he wasn't going to win this race, and cross traffic would have gotten the victory that he deserved.
He got a great setup and great ride, Sahara Sky, and cross traffic. To me, not the official winner of the race, but to me the winner of the race because he ran so hard and was on that fast pace the whole way. Had that miscue at the start. Is too clear here in deep stretch and just gets run down by the horse that got the perfect setup.
Yeah, and a great ride. Now, flat out, despite what Junior Alvarado said, he was not doing any better than third. He might have been a length and a half or so further if he hadn't gotten in trouble. He was going to be third in here. He continued to run after the trouble, and that's a credit to him. Swagger Jack stopped running. Now, I didn't like Swagger Jack in here, and I know you didn't like him either. The question is, how much better could he have run if he hadn't been stopped? Was he a horse who sulked after he was stopped, or was he a horse that just out of the blue improved dramatically in the Carter, and he went back to being not as good as these horses?
Yeah, I think he got a good setup in the Carter, and he ran a big race that day. There's no doubt about it. But they don't run the same race all the time, and he certainly, on the board he wasn't a huge factor, and in the race he wasn't a huge factor either.
No, but he did stop running, and you have to ask yourself when horses get in trouble. Some horses might sulk, other horses like Flat Out went on. Once again, we can always use your help here on Trips and Traps at tripsandtraps@myrank.com.
Thanks for watching.